The judge reversed the order and put Preston back in his mother's custody, said DHS had not proven that he needed to be in custody for medical neglect. But immediately, the district attorney, who seems to always be on the side of DHS despite the evidence, said, "We intend to appeal." They were essentially being held hostage for over a week. Preston's health plummeted. Preston wanted to tell his own story. When I went to the hospital and I saw the medical state of this child, I was taken back. A kid that was mowing the lawn, a week and a half earlier, now couldn't get out of bed. He was not mobile. He had massive neuropathy through his legs. He was crying out in pain every few minutes. He had this huge infection from the bone marrow biopsy. So he's flowing with all of these big antibiotics, and the hospital won't give probiotics to even help this already immune compromised child fight that. Mom is walking a tightrope. If she goes against the treatment plan or shows too much of her own free will in this, DHS is going to come in and say that she's not following medical advice.
To August of last year, nobody really knew who I was.
There's about 12 people who are producing 65% of anti-vaccine misinformation.
We need to come together as Americans and realize that we have a war at hand here. Right?
Like, dude, how scared of this shit do you have to be to be wearing gloves, a face shield, a mask at this point?
Help us to urge folks and say to them, look, it's time to roll up your sleeve and get the shot.
Chiropractor in Omaha, Nebraska, responsible for 65% of the anti-vaccine misinformation. Put what I say to the test. Just don't write me off as crazy misinformation.
Doctor, please bring yourself in. 600,000 people will die of cancer. 300,000 people will die of obesity this year. When is enough enough?
Katie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to be sitting down with you.
Yes, thanks so much for being willing to talk about this. This case is nuts.
So tell me, kind of just walk me through what's going on here.
Well, I'm an independent journalist in Oklahoma, and we have a case of medical kidnapping. So this is the government reaching into somebody's family and taking their child because they're not in agreement with the treatment that the family has chosen. It's sort of a very unholy alliance between the child welfare system and this government-controlled medical system. And then as I dug deeper and deeper, it's all sort of fueled by this really progressive ideology that's come into our child welfare system. So in Oklahoma, we call it the Department of Human Services. Some places it's DCF, but this is about a woman named Dana Mooney. And she has a 17-year-old son named Preston. He is autistic, and he has been diagnosed in like late 23, early 2024 with CML, so a chronic form of leukemia. And they sought conventional treatment through OU, that's the University of Oklahoma Health System. So that's a government-funded medical establishment. OU Children's is where they were. And they got conventional medical treatment, which included chemotherapies, and blood transfusions, and he did not do well. His health plummeted. They ended up opting after a certain number of months to leave that system and to do some genetic testing. They engaged a licensed holistic provider. I've talked to this woman. She has 2 PhDs in the area. They identified some genetic deficiencies, the MTHFR gene mutation in Preston, and they started to treat him accordingly. His health started to improve. He gained 20 pounds, which was his weight was a huge problem when he was under conventional treatment. They started to do all kinds of things with nutrition, addressing his deficiencies, and he started to feel much, much, much better. Then on September 29th of this year, someone called in an anonymous tip alleging medical neglect associated with Preston. And our DHS system showed up at their door, knocking on their door. At the time, Preston's out back. He's mowing and helping his stepfather weed eat the lawn. So we don't have a kid here who is in dire need of medical care. He was feeling much better. And the DHS worker comes in and says, I need to basically know about what treatment plan he's on now. I need to talk to his provider. She even told the mom, Dana Mooney, that she believed that the anonymous tip to the child neglect hotline was, quote, retaliatory. So she was very much gaslighting this family into thinking she was going to be reasonable. So the mom set up an appointment with her provider so they could sit down and talk about this. It was set for a Friday. That was DHS asking for it to be set on Friday. And when mom brought her son Preston to the doctor's office, his provider's office, the DHS worker, same one, showed up with an emergency custody order and 2 law enforcement officials. And they took Preston into custody. And they brought him immediately to OU Children's Hospital. And they began, this is late on a Friday when you can't get a court injunction. You as a parent can't fight back on a Friday. It gives them 2 whole days to do whatever they want before they have to prove themselves. So he's on chemotherapy, blood transfusions. Mom asks.
Let's back up really quick. So,
yes.
So first off, how old is Preston?
Preston's 17 now.
17. Okay. So basically what we're dealing with is the infringement upon the parents' rights to choose what health care they want for what they believe is best. And this is what this is all about. This is not only obviously government overreach, but this is medical overreach. And so this is why I want to be sitting down with you to kind of tell the story. Obviously the parents have some legal battles already, that this is why they're not sitting down with me today, but you are speaking for them, for a voice for them, and to tell the story, to help get the story out, because stories like this are actually happening all across the nation, and it's a real thing, and it's a slippery slope when the medical establishment has this kind of authority to be able to just come in and do these types of things. Now, Preston is receiving chemotherapy. Is this despite the parents' will?
Correct. So they had chosen not to do any more chemotherapy, and they'd seen an improvement and were taking another path. But immediately on that weekend, they would not respect the parents' wishes to hold off. There was a hearing set for that Monday. He's taken into custody on Friday. They were going to be in court on Monday at what's called a show cause hearing. So that's when the government has to show up and show that they had cause, that this child met this legal standard for abuse and neglect that is written into Oklahoma law. They wouldn't even wait. Mom asked for the blood transfusion, asked if it could be insured to be free of vaccines, particularly COVID vaccine, and they would not respect that. Mom asked for leucovorin to also be given if they were going to insist on chemotherapy, because he does have this gene mutation that's common to autistic people and people with CML. And autistic people are more likely to have CML because of this gene deficiency, and they would not honor that. They went full ahead. He instantly, his health plummeted. And I think it's sort of important to know about this family. A little bit of background. Preston was born in 2008 and was a healthy, developing child. He met all of his milestones. He was even ahead. Mom told me that he was potty trained before his 2nd birthday, which is pretty amazing as far as development for a boy. And he had his 2-year-old shots, and he was vaccine injured. Immediately started having 40 to 60 seizures a day is what Mom told me during the interview. They couldn't even find treatment for him in Oklahoma, so they spent years traveling back and forth to Cook Children's in Fort Worth. He was diagnosed with 3 different forms of epilepsy and then also with autism. So for a parent who was in a system with a healthy 2-year-old who was damaged to that extent, you can see, and had to fight her way through every step of it, she has earned her distrust of both the medical system and the government-connected medical system. They told her at the time that his prognosis was very bad, that he would likely only be able to learn 10 words. So as a mom, she needed to choose those words very carefully. And this is, I will tell you, I've interviewed this mom extensively. She's very smart. She's a researcher at heart, and she found another way. She researched, she found therapies, she found holistic interventions, she learned about gene mutations, and this child has thrived. He is very high functioning, doing very well except for the CML, and has beat every prognosis that came after the vaccine injury that the system didn't want to admit happened.
So tell me, where are the parents at now in the fight? And
so the parents are, so Dana Mooney is actually, I believe, being politically targeted by the system. Dana Mooney is a chapter chair for Moms for Liberty. If you're familiar with Moms for Liberty, they're a parents' rights group, and they fight at school boards. They fight for medical freedom. They fight DHS on behalf of parents. And she's been very active in that. We only have 4 Oklahoma chapter chairs of Moms for Liberty in Oklahoma, and 2 of those have had their sons medically kidnapped.
And this is prior to all of this going down. Like, this is, how long was the Moms for Liberty group? When was that established?
Moms for Liberty, I became really aware of what they were doing sort of during the COVID shutdown, and when people started to fight back against the more radical ideologies in public schools, the books that shouldn't have been in public schools that were pornographic, those kind of things. So around 2000, you couldn't stop hearing about Moms for Liberty. So she's been involved in that since then. And she is the second of 4, only four leaders of that group in our state who's been targeted for this and had her child taken away.
We'll be right back after a word for our sponsor. Today's episode is sponsored by Ezra Healing, a place devoted to renewal and deep-rooted well-being. Ezra Healing supports individuals and families in soothing the nervous system, releasing accumulated stress and trauma, and restoring the body's God-given ability to repair and thrive. Their method is gentle, discerning, and grounded in honoring how the body was created to function. With steady guidance, thoughtful education, and practical resources, they come alongside each person to foster safety, resilience, and whole person healing. If you're seeking a space to breathe, rebalance, and truly heal, Ezra Healing offers a powerful path forward. To learn more, visit them at www.ezrahealing.com. And now back to the show.
So the authorities came in to their home. They took Preston from the home.
They did.
Against the parents' will.
They did.
I have 5 children, and if any government entity thinks they can do that against my will, to me, I would say they would do so over my dead body. And that's to me, that's, how do you say it? I mean, I don't know. I think that's the highest form of tyranny. Now, there might be a time and place when the children is truly in danger, or there might be a serious abuse going on, and maybe that's justified to go in and save the children. And I wholeheartedly believe that, and that there's children like that, and the government needs to come in and go help. But in this case, we need to have medical freedom. It's based off of chemotherapy is terrible. If you look at the stats, you look at the treatment for cancer in this country, it's absolutely rotten. The stats are terrible. People don't really die from cancer. They die from the chemo. I mean, not in every case. Obviously, all cancer spreads to the spine. It can be deadly, absolutely, but chemotherapy accelerates that. I would say the death rate. I mean, I've had family that has received chemotherapy, and it just kills them, kills the body, and it's just a lousy treatment. So, I side with the parents here. So, Preston, where is Preston now?
Preston is now in the permanent custody of DHS. So it's kind of interesting how it happened. They went to this first show cause hearing on that Monday after they'd already started all of these treatments. And the DHS worker, who didn't even take time to learn about the parent's treatment plan before she got an emergency custody order, lied on the stand, essentially. She lied about what was going on with the treatment plan. She lied about Preston not having a provider. And she was caught at that show cause hearing not telling the truth. And a lot of what happens with our DHS system is a lie by omission. So she left out anything good that was happening and just made the family look as though they weren't doing anything at all to help treat Preston. And then the judge, something that's different in this case is Dana Mooney has a very good attorney, and that doesn't typically happen for child welfare cases. It's often parents who don't have the resources, and they have to show up within a couple of days and prove their case, and they're on their own, and it's just a rubber stamp. They do whatever DHS says in the courts. So This was different. The judge reversed the order and put Preston back in his mother's custody, said DHS had not proven that he needed to be in custody for medical neglect. But immediately, the district attorney, who seems to always be on the side of DHS despite the evidence, said, we intend to appeal. So for 3 days, he can't go anywhere. He has to stay where he is in the hospital, even though he's back in his mother's custody. So they were trapped. Then they are in the hospital for those 3 days. And let me tell you, they have a 24-hour supervisor sitting by his bed watching his mother. She can't be there unless DHS's supervisor is in the room, which is absurd. And then they tell her, it doesn't matter if he's back in your custody. We will make a new referral if you leave here. It will be against medical advice, and this will start all over. And they threatened criminal charges against her. So they were essentially being held hostage for over a week. And during that week, Preston's health plummeted. He got a massive infection from the bone marrow biopsy, which they go in through the hip. His mother called me and asked me if I'd be willing to tell Preston's story because Preston wanted to tell his own story. That's when I became involved. And when I went to the hospital and I saw the medical state of this child, I was taken back. A kid that was mowing the lawn, a week and a half earlier, now couldn't get out of bed. He was not mobile. He had massive neuropathy through his legs. He was crying out in pain every few minutes. He was had this huge infection from the bone marrow biopsy. So he's flowing with all of these big antibiotics, and the hospital won't give probiotics to even help this already immune compromised child fight that. Mom is walking a tightrope. If she goes against the treatment plan or shows too much of her own free will in this, DHS is going to come in and say that she's not following medical advice. Mm-hmm. So she's asking, can we hold off on chemotherapy while these antibiotics are trying to work on this infection? Can we do probiotics? And she's really just getting blown off in this thing. It felt like, as a parent myself, if I had been in that situation, I would have felt like I got to get my kid out of here or they're going to kill him.
Right. So how long has Preston been in the hospital now?
So Preston is out of the hospital now. What happened is Mom ended up, shortly after my interview, an article came out about his condition and the change in his condition. She chose to discharge him from the hospital. There was a standoff in the middle of the night where they were saying, you can't, we'll call the police. There was one of our state senators who's an exceptional representative of the people. His name's Shane Jett. He came in the middle of the night and talked the hospital down and said, no, she has a right to leave. She had a letter and she had 2 outside providers lined up to treat him. So she wasn't acting against medical advice. She was using her parental rights to take another path. Yeah, this child was technically back in her custody. So they should have gotten the paperwork and said, thank you very much. Let us know what we can do. They did not. They fought her tooth and nail. So there was a standoff and they left the hospital about 3 a.m. Within hours, DHS was banging on her door again with a new allegation of medical neglect. There was a sign on the door per the provider. His name was Dr. Marsh, who was now treating, that said, no one's coming in. This is an immunocompromised child. If you're DHS, call her attorney. So DHS was in touch with the attorney. The attorney was giving them whatever information they wanted, but it wasn't good enough. They ended up getting another emergency custody order, starting the process all over, threatened Mom with criminal charges. You either bring him back to the hospital or we're going to arrest you. So she had to bring him back. Now, the funny thing is, in about the week that he was away from the hospital, off of chemotherapy, doing some of the other things that they were doing, he had seen his Dr. Marsh, who was one of the 2 providers that was going to work with him. The other one that would be treating his leukemia didn't want to see him till he was off chemo for 2 weeks, right? But his health had improved and his white blood cell count had come way down. Dr. Marsh had run labs, but they took him anyway and said that he was near death. So they bring him back to the hospital under threat and they just put him in a bed. There's nothing to be done. He's not at death's door like the emergency custody order says. They just sit him in a bed and wait for the next show cause hearing. So they go through it again. Again, DHS lies. This time they drag in medical experts from OU, the same people who were treating him at OU. And they don't even agree in their assessment. And they start this language thing where they start saying that he was never on chemotherapy. They start saying that these were TKIs, this wasn't chemotherapy. Now, I'm going to tell you, I was in the room trying to interview Preston, and one of those doctors who testified came in the room and was talking to mom about wanting to start a third chemotherapy, and she called it chemotherapy. Preston's records, which the family has given me all access to his online records, they have 17 pages of specific to Preston instructions about side effects of the chemotherapy he's on and what they needed to expect. He was on drugs to counteract those side effects. But now they're playing a game as though they couldn't possibly have harmed him because he was never on chemotherapy. It's a bit like the vaccine redefinition during COVID when they wanted to shove everything underneath that immunization label, so they changed the definition. Now they're sort of changing definitions to throw things out.
So I hope that Preston's parents have a lawsuit going. I mean, this is massive litigation. I mean, violations of, first of all, if there's no informed consent, now they're lying about that, and the health records show that they're doing one thing but saying another. I mean, that's a lawsuit. This whole thing smells of a lawsuit. So I hope that's going.
Well, they have Daniel McClure is the attorney that's been representing them, and it appears he's fighting very hard on this. Tom Renz is also sort of a national voice in this, and I believe he's consulting behind the scenes. I don't know what their plans are legally, but I agree. So outside of the courtroom at both of these show cause hearings, because Dana Mooney is very politically connected on the conservative side of things, there's been an outpouring. There's been a crowd both times. People are extremely upset about this case. And there are families coming up. I was outside doing interviews during the first one, and there were maybe a half dozen families that showed up. They're experiencing the exact same thing in this very county happening to them. They just don't have the political connections or the voice to be out there fighting against it. But this is not a one-off. Every parent should be very concerned that the government really can step into your family and take your children.
So when was the second round of them taking Preston?
So they took Preston. She chose to discharge him on Friday, October 17th.
Last month.
They got the second emergency custody order on October 22nd. And then they went 2 days later to the show cause hearing. At that show cause hearing, despite DHS on the stand, omitting all kinds of evidence and being caught at it by her attorney and the judge agreeing, they decided to go with the quote medical experts, and the judge put him in permanent custody. So Preston is now in foster care.
My goodness, no.
But he is placed with family because it would be very difficult for DHS to do anything otherwise. Our state law mandates that they seek a kinship placement first. And this is not a dysfunctional family. This is a family that has a very wide safety net. They have extended family who function well and have strong relationships with Preston.
This whole thing is rooted in love and care. They want to do what's best because they love him and care for him. This is a perfect example of how broken the system is. It's so.
And one of the more concerning aspects is how the medical community goes right along with it. They'll even go on the stand and mince words about what is chemotherapy after the fact. I mean, there's a huge argument about informed consent. If I'm talking to a mom and to the patient about chemotherapy, and then I turn around in court and say it's something else, was that really informed consent? There's just so many things legally here that are shaky that are happening. And then the other thing is, this is a government-funded hospital. And the minute that a child comes into custody, even emergency custody, where the government hasn't proven anything, they go off of their private insurance. Preston was on 2 different private insurances, and they go on to Sooner Care, which is our state Medicaid. And it's a blank check for hospitals. Preston is a $1 million kid, probably more, in that those treatments really aren't questioned. They are paid for. Maybe families that couldn't otherwise seek that kind of treatment, even if they wanted to, wouldn't be able to afford a lot of the things that are going on. It would break them. But once they're under sooner care, the taxpayers are footing the bill, and nothing's too expensive for treatment. And there's not really that cost risk analysis going on at all. So you see, when I was at the second show cause hearing, I was outside the hearing because they closed these hearings. DHS, there are privacy laws, and DHS hides behind a lot of those. The privacy laws are intended to protect the family, to protect the family's information and the family's privacy. So it should be DHS swearing the oath not to share the family's information. Instead, DHS uses it to hide all case information of anything they don't want anyone to see, including the family. So we have a real trouble with transparency. And then we also have a political system, which is probably very similar in other states, where our Senate committee that is over Health and Human Services is oversight for DHS, for the hospital medical systems, for the Department of Health, for the Department of Mental Health. They're supposed to be keeping these agencies in line. And what we see is sort of the most corrupt people rise to positions over those committees, and they're running their campaigns off of lobbyist money that is all from the medical establishment. It's all wrapped up with academia because this is the University of Oklahoma, and it's tied to a really progressive mindset that has really taken over DHS. So it's the whole world layering against a conservative Christian family who speaks out for the rights of others.
Mm-hmm. Right. So do you know obviously you know the Preston's parents personally?
I have. I've gotten to interview both of them extensively.
And you've seen the interactions with them and Preston, you've seen the home.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So really, so their allegations against them, they're not rooted in truth at all. This is not a child who's been abused. This is not a child who's been neglected. Quite to the contrary. When I interviewed Mom about the protocols that they were taking during the year that they are away from OU Medical, she had to commit to just a really extensive daily routine of all kinds of things. They were working on those genetic deficiencies. His nutrition was huge. They were eliminating all kinds of toxins. They were working on his glutathione level. Mom is very informed about that because his was so depleted he had none. She knew more about leucovorin and how that could work, and how in both autistic people and people with CML that the body can't take in this activated form of folinic acid, basically B9, and that leucovorin helped to do that. She understood that the first time that he had chemotherapy, that it wasn't beneficial because it was being blocked by this particular mechanism, and that this would have been helpful. And now we see President Trump and Bobby Kennedy coming out and talking about autism and talking about leucovorin and how it was being used to help with side effects of different cancers. And during that, they discovered that it was also super helpful in eliminating some of these symptoms of autism. It all makes so much sense. And this mom is so informed. There were supplements involved. She's not anti-chemotherapy, but the particular chemotherapies they were using didn't work. And she understood why, but the system wouldn't listen. And it was very interesting. No, they were doing an amazing job. They were doing more to take care of this child by leaps and bounds than most great parents of a normally functioning child have to make. So no, I said there's no evidence of neglect. There's no evidence of any lack of relationships there. Preston came home. They decided to homeschool him after he was diagnosed with CML, just because he was immunocompromised. And now DHS has decided, now that he's in foster care, he's got to go back. The original referral that came into the neglect hotline said both an accusation anonymously of medical neglect and of educational neglect, which we're seeing a lot of this. There's also some targeting of homeschoolers in our state and parents' rights to educate their children in the way that they feel is best. It's contrary to our laws. Oklahoma's laws say parents don't need to stick to any curriculum. The kids do not have to go to schools
they can do as they please. But then we have this government agency saying, oh no, that's risk of harm if you do what you please. So both on the medical and educational side, I see this government knows best at all costs, or we can take your children kind of an attitude.
Yeah, it's criminal. I mean, that's why I wanted to sit down with you, because this is something I believe in. I think we need to fight against this with every ounce of energy that we have to really get the word out here. Now, I want to, it's a slippery slope when the government has the authority and they think they can just go in and do this. You're guilty till proven innocent mentality, and it's just not what this country was founded on. Now, again, there might be some times and scenarios where the children are in danger, and we need to protect those children. But again, this is a perfect example of government overreach when people think that they have the authority to go in and take these children out and put them in foster care. I mean, that just breaks my heart. So that being said, I brought you on here because I want to know how we can, obviously we can get the word out by sharing this podcast, sharing the word about Preston, but how can we get involved? How can we help?
Well, there actually is, and I'll forward it to you. There is a fundraising effort for the legal fund for this family. If you want to know more about Preston's story, and that fund's included in my articles, so you'll see behind me V1SUT. If you go to v1sut.com, there are 2 articles about this particular case. And they're on the front page. They're lead stories, both of them. So you'll be able to see that. And there's more information about the Mooney family and how you can help in those. I would also say that there's another layer to the story that may be more frightening than what we've uncovered thus far. So in anything like this, and here's full disclosure, I am a journalist by education, by trade, but there was a time in my life when I sort of heeded a call in prayer, and I went to work for the child welfare system in Oklahoma.
We'll be right back after a word for our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Ezra Healing, a leader in the emerging wellness paradigm taking shape across North America and beyond. People everywhere are recognizing that the old sick care model, quick fixes, symptom chasing, and surface level solutions simply isn't enough. Ezra Healing is a part of the shift toward truly patient-centered care that prioritizes well-being, integrity, and a do-no-harm approach. At Ezra Healing, your whole lifestyle, rhythms, and patterns are considered to better support the interconnected systems of your body. They're focused on real solutions, long-term health promotion, and prevention, an evolving grassroots movement dedicated to helping individuals and families live healthier and more resilient lives. If you're ready for a wellness experience that puts humanity first, Ezra Healing is guiding the way. To learn more, visit them at www.ezrahealing.com. And now, back to the show.
So I am a former child welfare worker. I understand the law. I understand what they're supposed to do, and I understand what they're not doing. And this case has opened up for me as I started to look at who has authority over the Mooney case in DHS. It's Canadian County is the county of record for this DHS case. The CPS supervisor who is over this case, who is the one who testified against the Mooney family in this last show cause, is a radical progressive. Her online profile, public information, is as radical as it gets. She's been same-sex married twice to another woman, to 2 different women since 2015, when same-sex marriage was sort of forced on the states that did not vote for it. The case was moved to permanency after they took permanent custody after the second hearing. And the supervisor on that case is a man who is same-sex married, and he is and his husband in their public social media are part of what's called the bear culture. He has BEAR tattooed across his knuckles. That is a subset of the male gay culture. And this is America. By law, people can do whatever they want to do. But I'm now digging all the way up to the top of this particular district of DHS out in Canadian County, which is run by someone also who is of the LGBT activist mindset based on their public postings. It's interesting that this agency in what is arguably one of the most conservative states as far as the electorate has been completely taken over by a progressive mindset. It appears that you will not be promoted if you are of a conservative mindset, and that people are being targeted based on things other than the facts of the case. So I'm really digging into that. I'm very worried about that. I'm also finding evidence that these folks who are LGBT activists, I don't know how to say it otherwise, given their social media postings, they work for DHS, but then they also start nonprofits while they're employed with the state government to recruit and encourage LGBT foster families. So we have evidence of that. They're recruiting staff from their own social media where they purport very leftist ideology. And so, Ben, you have to understand that Oklahoma was the only state that in all 3 times that Donald Trump ran for president, all 77 counties went for Donald Trump. This is a very conservative electorate, but the government, and particularly these government agencies that have the power to reach into families, are not only not representative of them, I fear are targeting them. Some of these employees who, so I will ask you the question, this is a very high up employee that I'm currently researching, single, lesbian, but has a partner who also works for DHS in a high position. And they end up taking in twin babies from DHS. It appears like a huge conflict of interest, no matter who they are. And the question is, as Donald Trump said yesterday, as he was signing an executive order about foster care support, he talked about how Christian families are being screened out of the process to be fosters. They're being discriminated against. And it seems like very conservative Oklahoma might be sort of the hotbed of that happening. Because if something goes wrong in that home where 2 high up managers who are LGBT activists in DHS decide to reach in and take state custody babies that come into custody and bring them into their home and adopt them, who's going to reach in when they overreach and they don't give those parents the chance to reunite with their children? Who is going to step in if there's abuse in that household? Absolutely no one. They run the system. So just like everything, this case is really important for the Mooney family, but the research into it is showing we have a much, much bigger problem here.
100%. And I think this LGBTQ group, majority of them, in the left, not just the LGBTQ, but just the left leaning side, they've, it's not even the Democratic Party, because they've abandoned democratic principles. It's this whole leftist side have, they're basically, they come at you. I've been in the vaccine realm trying to fight the corruption on the vaccine side, and they come at me with violence and just such hatred. So if those people got into a position, I would absolutely be targeted. If you are on this right wing or right leaning, or just go against the government and against their views, and like especially during COVID, or if you don't want to get vaccinated, they'll probably lock you up and they'll sleep comfortably at night. These people don't care. I mean, I've been so attacked from on every level against these people, and so it's a scary thought for these people to get into a place of government authority. But I want people to understand, people need to understand that medical tyranny, it always begins or presents itself as public safety, right? But it always ends with stolen liberty. Okay, I want to repeat that so people understand this, because this is the whole general theme, whether it's through censorship, suppression of information, or like shadow banning, or in this case, medical kidnapping, medical tyranny, okay, which is at our doorstep. And if we stay complacent, we're going to let them in the door. So medical tyranny always presents itself. It's for our health or it's for public safety, but it always ends in stolen liberty. And that is a true fact. And this is why we only have the rights that we're willing to defend. We have to get into this fight, because if they can do this in Oklahoma, they can do this anywhere. And I'm seeing it everywhere, not just in Oklahoma. I've heard cases like this in multiple scenarios. There was another story like this years ago where the parents refused chemotherapy because the doctor said he had cancer. They wanted a second opinion, so they called CPS. DHS got involved. They medically kidnapped the child, and then the parents proved that the kid didn't even have cancer. It was a false diagnosis. And so, and so the parents were like, you took our child out of our home and you were forcing chemotherapy on him when he didn't even have cancer, and all they wanted was a second opinion. And so this is why, I got into this fight in the first place, because I stand against medical tyranny, medical, mandates, and I think we should have the right to, and freedom to be able to choose and to refuse the healthcare. If we don't want vaccines, we should have the God-given right to say no. If we don't to have chemo, we should have the right to say no. I mean, this is why Benjamin Rush, the signer of our Declaration of Independence, stated we must put medical freedom in the Constitution, because the time will come when medicine will organize into that undercover dictatorship to restrict the art of healing to one class of men and deny equal privileges to others. And that's where we are at. That time is now. So I pray for Preston. I pray for the parents. If the parents are listening to this, I'll be praying for you. I support you. Katy, I want you to, one more time, tell us how we can support Preston, how we can support the parents, and put a plug in for that, please.
Well, they do have a legal fund, and I'm going to provide that to you so you can link this to when you post this podcast. They do have a legal fund that folks can go to and donate if they feel led to do that. The articles are there at v1sut.com. You are encouraged to share those. Public pressure seems to be our most potent weapon these days. We do not have a state government that is working to protect her. Her senator of record, I told you about a senator who was defending her in the hospital. He's not her senator of record. Her senator, she is a constituent of the chair of the Health and Human Services Committee. He actually went on, after I published about this, he immediately went on the local legacy media and he called for censorship about misinformation about this story. So she's up against the entire government apparatus. So please share this story far and wide in whatever format you can find it. You're welcome to go to V1SUT and donate to her legal fund. I will definitely get you that link and help this family if you can, because they are in a fight. And as you said, I think the fight goes a lot farther than getting this child out of state custody. He is 17 years old. So next September, he's going to be 18. We already see some signs in the case that they are trying to, they immediately sent him for a forensic interview. They're doing all kinds of evaluations on him. What we're trying to block is that they make the case that he's autistic and he can't make decisions for himself after 18 and try to retain control of him. I can tell you for the record, this child knew everything that was going on. This child can make those decisions. He told me what was in the court documents that was inaccurate. He described in detail the treatment plan that they were doing that was making him feel better. He called DHS abusers and he asked for a protective order against DHS. He can definitely make his own decisions and he has his own opinions. So this is a long fight. And I think you're right. I think this fight goes past juvenile deprived court in Oklahoma. I think this becomes a federal civil case. We'll see how that goes. And I will keep you updated about progress on it.
Well, I'll be praying. I pray that Preston hears this message. And if you're listening, Preston, we're praying for you. Hold strong, be bold and courageous, knowing that there are people fighting for you and they are on your side. So, Katy, thank you. Now it is v1sut.com. It's with the number one. Don't spell out one. It's the V with the number one.
Number one,
SUT.com. Thank you, Katy. God bless.
God bless you.
To August of last year, nobody really knew who I was.
There's about 12 people who are producing 65% of anti-vaccine misinformation.
We need to come together as Americans and realize that we have a war at hand here. Right?
Dude, how scared of this shit do you have to be to be wearing gloves, a face shield, and a mask at this point?
Help us to urge folks and say to them, look, it's time to roll up your sleeve and get the shot.
Chiropractor in Omaha, Nebraska, responsible for 65% of the anti-vaccine misinformation. Put what I say to the test. Just don't write me off as crazy misinformation.
Doctor, please bring your cell phone. 600,000 people will die of cancer. 300,000 people will die of obesity this year. When is enough enough?